Thank you all for coming. We are all grateful for Swamiji to make the trip all the way from San Francisco to here. The topic today is Befriending the Mind. We'll have 45 minutes of talk by Swamiji followed by Q&A. Just a small background for you. So Swamiji heads up the Vedanta Society in San Francisco. This was founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1900, and there has been a lineage of a few Swamis who have come in there just to maintain exactly the guidance that Swami Vivekananda had given. So Swamiji is from that lineage, and we are all looking forward to the talk. With that, I will hand it over to you.
So thank you, Yogesh.
So you have to hold that.
Oh, yeah. So? No, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, now, just by way of introduction, in America we call it Vedanta Society, but it is a branch of the Ramakrishna Mission, which is a monastic organization founded by Swami Vivekananda in India, in Calcutta, 1897. So this was founded as a branch of the Ramakrishna Mission.
Can you hold it a little close? Yeah.
You can hear, of course. So now I come to the topic in front of me. So the topic is Befriending the Mind. So maybe the title implies that frequently the mind is not always our friend. Mind sometimes could be our enemy. There's a big problem. So there's an ancient statement in the Mahabharata. So mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayo. So mind can help us, can be a guide, a friend, and can be a very compassionate companion, a well-wisher. And mind also can be a big problem. If we want to get an example of how mind frequently becomes, acts as an enemy, you try to take a decision. So tomorrow onwards, I shall practice meditation or prayer every day. Or if you are students in the school, tomorrow onwards I shall work harder than I'm working now. You just take a decision. You may listen to a lecture, you may read a book, or you may discuss some spiritual topic with a friend, or you may get some advice from one of your well-wishers. Well, this is not good for you, you should do something else. You should do this in a different way. And you sincerely decide, well, I shall bring about a change in my style of life. Well, can I give an example? Is your mind? Suppose people who are in the habit of taking a small quantity of alcohol every day, and they happen to read in a book, it's not good for health. And tomorrow onwards, you bring about a change. You sincerely decide to bring about a change in your life. But then when you try really to implement a change, something prevents you from doing that. You sincerely want to do something, there is no doubt about it. You are very honest and you are fully determined, maybe to start praying every day, or even start doing exercise every day. Your doctor tells you you should do exercise every day to reduce your weight. And you take a decision. Next day, when you actually try to start doing exercise in the morning, well, I shall do it tomorrow. Perhaps today is something else, some other obligations. Now, here you find mind plays a trick. So mind could play a trick in the form of procrastination, postponement, or some kind of a justification for not doing that. So you find a conflict between what you want to do and what your mind permits you to do. If this conflict was not there, life would be very wonderful. And people are able to bring about a change in their lives because they were able to resolve this conflict. And many people fail because they are not able to resolve this conflict. In criminal psychology, there is a principle. About 75% of the criminal population would be happy if they could take to some other profession. The percentage could be much higher in certain areas. But they are not able to do that. You can't say they are insincere, they are dishonest, not at all. In very many cases, people are very sincere. But something prevents them from implementing the decision which they take. Who is the culprit here? Mind. A mind who is not acting as your best friend. A mind that's sometimes acting as your enemy. So there are occasions where mind could be your best friend. And there are very many occasions when mind is not your friend at all. So how to resolve this crisis? That's the subject before us. Now what do you mean by healthy mindedness or mind as a friend? So I can just recite a very interesting definition of healthy mindedness in one of our ancient Sanskrit scriptures. It is a well-known work called Susruta Sutras. Belongs to around 6th or 7th century BC, maybe earlier, little later. It has got a definition, Prasannatmendriya manaha sustha iti abhidiyate. Sustha means somebody who is healthy. Prasanna atmendriya manaha. When your atma here means mind, not atma. So, in the Ayurvedic context here atma means mind here. So the whole verse is this: samadosha samagnisa samadhadu malakriyaha prasannatmendriya manaha sustita vidhiyati. When do you feel perfect physical health? When your body is not complaining. If you have a headache, your body is complaining. That means you are unhealthy. If you have stomach problem, stomach pain, your stomach reminds you of its existence. If your body doesn't have any complaint, it means you can forget your body. So if you can forget you have a mind, then that's a perfect state of healthy mindedness. So when the mind is in a natural, spontaneous, effortless state of equilibrium, a kind of inner bliss and happiness, where you forget about your mind. That means you're perfectly healthy. In order to forget your mind, you have to go beyond mind. So there's a very interesting principle in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter. The central message is this: if you want to keep your mind in a state of stability and perfect health, it's called prasanna. Prasanna is a very interesting word. If you can combine words like a natural state of equilibrium, poise, balance, effortless joy, inner contentment, all together is called prasanna. So when your mind is in such a state, your mind will not remind you of its existence, which means you can go beyond mind. You can forget your mind. In order to forget your mind, you have to link your mind to something which is higher than mind. Which means the problems of mind or psychological problems cannot have permanent solution at psychological level. Psychological problems can have permanent solutions only at the spiritual level. Which means mind should be linked to the spirit, the Atma. That's why there is a very interesting description of life as a whole in one of the Vedic scriptures. It's called Kathopanishad. You think of your life as a journey in a chariot. Now, Atmanam Radhinam Vidhi Shariram Radhamevacha Buddhim tu Saradhin Vidhi Manam Pragrahamevacha Indriyani Paramnyahu. That's how it begins. Vishyansteshu Gocharan Apmendriya Maniruttam Bhokta Ityahum Manishina. This is meaning here. Anyway, son, even if you don't know Sanskrit, you won't lose anything, you won't miss anything. I shall explain. Think of life as a journey, a pilgrimage. And you are taking on the journey on a chariot. You need a pair of horses, and you need a road, and you need reins with which the driver of a chariot, the driver controls the horses, and you are the traveler. Now here there are a few important things to be kept in mind. You need a driver who is very stable, who is reliable, who knows the route, who knows how to control the horses with the reins in his hand, and who knows the path, the road, and who has a clear understanding of the destination, the place to be reached. But the most important part is a driver with steady hands and steady reins with which the driver controls the horses. If the horses are not properly controlled, then you won't reach your destination. And you may have the horses can drive you into precipice. And the driver is not steady, then also it won't work. But the driver, he may be steady, and the horses may be very healthy, very strong, and the roads are well paved. No problem. But remember, the driver should have reins in his hands with which he controls the horses. Here, the driver is intelligence or intellect. We are the ones traveling the chariot, and the reins is the mind. Reins cannot be broken. A broken reed, it may break the horses, you won't be able to control the horses. So the horses should be perfectly controlled, and the reins should be steady in the driver's hands, the charioteer's hands. So here the problem is, suppose the driver doesn't care to control the horses, leave the whole responsibility of taking you to your destination to the horses. It will be the horses' journey, not your journey. So the mind should be perfectly steady in the driver's hands. The problem is, if the reins are not steady in the driver's hand, then the horses won't listen to the driver. The horses will take you towards their own direction. So if we don't control the mind, if we do not divert our mind towards healthy channels, then mind will take to unhealthy channels. Mind has one problem. It doesn't remain neutral. If you do not feed mind with good thoughts and good ideas, then mind will take bad food, poisonous food. It won't stop. It won't practice Ekadasi or Shivaratri. Mind can never remain quiet for a minute actually. That's one problem with mind. So mind should be always filled with healthy food. When children are growing up, when they are going to schools, we should make deliberate, conscious effort to feed their minds with healthy food. If we don't feed the mind with healthy food, mind will take poisonous food. And how to avoid eating poisonous food? How to avoid unhealthy, undesirable ideas coming to the mind? Because mind is fed with thoughts and ideas, impressions and all kinds of thought currents. for that mind should be diverted towards healthy channels. I can give you a very wonderful example from one of our classical works, Patanjali Yoga Sutra. It's called, India is a very elaborate yoga psychology, which goes much more profound. It is not my opinion alone, it is the view of many modern psychologists. Indian psychology or yoga psychology gives a very detailed analysis of human mind. So I shall try to focus on a few ideas, but the general principle is this. Our mind can be in a state of it's called Mudha state, Vimudha state, Vikshipta state, Egagra state, Niruddha state. When we are very restless, we can't focus on anything. It's a kind of psychological problem. Total restlessness is called Mudha state. Vikshipta state is actually the normal state, where normally when we try to do something, our mind doesn't cooperate. This is what I'm going to focus on, Vikshipta state. What is Vikshipta state? That's a normal state of human mind that you find in normal life situations. I gave the example in the beginning itself. When we try to do something noble, something we know very well will be helpful for us, that means it's something that will turn our mind to a best friend. We are not able to keep steady in that effort. On the one hand, let us say when we go to temple or a church or any place of worship, when we go to a library, when we read a wonderful book or when we listen to a wonderful lecture, immediately this is a very wonderful thing. Okay, that's we decide. But then when we actually try to practice it, we are not able to do that. So mind, on the one hand, at one point is in a very healthy, helpful state. At some other time, mind becomes unhealthy or a hostile, unfriendly state. It's called Vikshipta state, like a pendulum, the pendulum of a clock, either one direction or the opposite direction. Mind goes from one to the other end, frequently changes. It's a fluctuating, continuously changing. Now, how to keep this mind steady and focused and linked to one higher idea? The easiest thing to do is to focus on some noble deed, some noble action, some noble ideal. We should set before us some higher noble ideal, which should not be part of a profession. It should not be part of our job. Because normally, whatever work we are doing, you're working in the office, working in the university, working in information technology, different areas. All these professions and activities have some purpose or other in mind. Either job, money, wealth, promotion, status, and many things. Can we do something which we know very well will not bring us any profit, any kind of tangible secular benefit? Anything we can do with some degree of unselfishness. Some kind of activity which we know very well will not bring us any tangible profit or benefit. If we can do that, then you find mind suddenly becomes a friend. So we call it Niskama Karma in the technical language of Vedanta, which I am not going to details. So anything you do, you can see this happening in our own life. Maybe community centers or temples or in these philanthropic organizations, in lodges, Lions Club, Vedanta societies, or church, or any activities we are doing. Most of you, at least many of you, will be doing some service activity. It may be teaching children, it may be engaging some service activity. You know why you do that? You do that because you are getting something out of it. That which you get out of that kind of service is not a secular benefit or profit. It is much more subtle and much more profound. Well, if you're walking in the street, if you find a blind man standing on the other side of the road, trying to cross the road, you help him to cross the road, and you go back, you go to your home, oh, I have done something fine. This you find often. Why? Any of these activities which do not bring any tangible benefit produces its own benefit. It is called this healthy mindedness. It is called, in Sanskrit there are certain terms which are used which are very kridarthada, kridagrityada, and many such words are used. Things that you do out of which, oh, I have done something wonderful, something useful. Nobody knows what good service you have done, but out of that you derive a kind of inexplicable inner joy and contentment. And mind you, this is very precious. Many people, billionaires, who have trillions of money in the banks, who cannot do anything unselfish, who cannot do any kind of service activity, they have to take medicines, pills. In fact, they want to forget. They have to run away from their own mind. That's why they take to drugs and drinks and alcohol and much worse things, because they're running away from their own mind. They are trying to run away from some kind of nagging mental problems. If those people start doing some kind of philanthropical activity, it may be you start a trust for helping people suffering from AIDS or Ebola or any of these people suffering from victims of earthquakes and natural calamities. You $100 or $1,000 you pay donation and you get, well, I have done something. Now that joy, that contentment is much more precious, and it is much more difficult to get, and you cannot purchase it for money. That means unselfish activity, philanthropical activities, service activities without any selfish motive produces some kind of a spiritual result. It is difficult to explain, but it is what people are looking for. You can find big billionaires, after piling up huge amounts of wealth, finally they start a trust to help people suffering from various problems all over the world. Without that they won't be able to sleep. By starting such a philanthropic activity, they derive a kind of inner contentment, and that helps them to sleep better. That helps them feeling, well, I have done something wonderful. That means activities, unselfish activities with any desire, can produce a kind of inner joy and contentment. In fact, in the Sanskrit Vedantic tradition, it is called Apurva and Adrishta. It is called Adrishta because you cannot see that. It is called Apurva because before you do this unselfish activity, it did not exist. So, any kind of unselfish activity, any noble activity will help us to keep our mind in a state of steady health. There are many interesting stories and examples from Hindu mythology, but I shall give a very classic example which is very well known. You have heard of, most of you must have heard of the great Vyasa. Vyasa is supposed to be the greatest author of Hindu mythological, philosophical, spiritual literature, and is most famous for editing all the four Vedas the four Vedas were edited by him, and he credited many books, especially the Mahabharata, Manus, Vyasa Smriti, Badrayana Sutras, and so on. But the one book which is still remembered and which people still read today with a great sense of sanctity and sacredness is Bhagavata Purana. You know how this man happened to write this book? Vyasa was a big man, big teacher, a big sage of his times. He was the most accomplished philosopher, author, and the most accomplished teacher of his times. Now, this Vyasa, whose own disciples had become well known, happier than him, he was suffering from depression. So you can imagine, the greatest sage of ancient times was a patient of depression. So he felt terribly unhappy. You find sometimes people who have accomplished a lot, they themselves have a lot of things to boast of, but within their own mind, they feel a kind of a deep sense of inadequacy, incompleteness. That was Vyasa's case. So one day he was sitting on the banks of river Saratoga, and he was completely forlorn in a depressed condition. At that time, another sage happens to come there. So this sage asked him, "What's the problem with you? You are the most accomplished author, the great teacher of our times, and you are so unhappy. What's the matter?" So Vyasa said, "Well, I don't know what's the reason, what's the problem." Then Narada, the other teacher, told him, "I know the problem. Vyasa had written so much, have taught so many people, but he had dealt with only some more or less secular ideas." So I shall take your attention to this particular dialogue. Narada tells you, "What did you write?" And Vyasa's most important book was Mahabharata, 145,000 verses, which 13 times the size of Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, and Virgil's Aeneid put together. That all the greatest and most ancient Latin and Greek creative writings put together, you multiply by 13 times, that is the size of Mahabharata. But the man was unhappy, and he had become so accomplished, so well known. He was totally unhappy. Then Narada told him, the subject you discussed in your work was dharma. Dharma, understood in the context of Mahabharata, is a kind of it's like a law, constitution. Dharma for one person may not be dharma for another person. In the Mahabharata, there are all kinds of characters, great characters, and also characters who are not so great. So that did not help him to experience inner contentment. Though reading his books, many people became happy and contented. But the author himself was unhappy. Then Narada told him, you should give to people something by reading which they will feel inner contentment. Then you yourself will feel inner contentment. So you should do something which makes others happy. Then you will yourself experience this happiness within you. So it is said that Vyasa took upon himself the responsibility of writing the Bhagavata Purana, which is a depiction of the great teachings and life of Sri Krishna. That's how he happened to write. And when Vyasa came to the last portion of his book, Satyam Param Dhimahi, Vyasa became very happy. Anyway, the story is simple. When we do something which is noble, which is totally unselfish, from which we do not and we will not get anything, any tangible benefit, that moment we become happy, we become contented. And contentment is a sign that your mind is your best friend. How do we understand that our mind is my friend? I feel a kind of inner contentment. And what is contentment? Contentment is a state of inner experience when we feel there is nothing more for me to look for, nothing more for me to achieve. The highest job, the most well-paid job, and the highest position, all these things do not give people inner contentment, can give satisfaction. And satisfaction is only the absence of dissatisfaction. satisfaction is not contentment. Because something, if we get something today, we become satisfied. When we lose the same thing tomorrow, it becomes the opposite of satisfaction. So it is only one side of the coin. And you cannot have a coin with only one side. If we get happy today, then we become unhappy tomorrow. So long as we look for happiness, there will come a time when we will be unhappy also. So happiness can never be a state of permanent state of mental condition. The best way to look for happiness is to stop looking for, the best way to avoid unhappiness is to stop looking for happiness. The moment we stop looking for happiness, then you find we never become unhappy. This is called inner contentment. So this contentment is so comprehensive. I can give an example of this inner contentment. That means inner satisfaction, higher satisfaction, which actually takes us beyond sukha and dukkha. The real sukha is attained, enjoyed, experienced when we transcend both sukha and dukkha. That term, it may be a bit paradoxical language, Gita says, sukham atyandikam yettat buddhi grahim atindriyam, means the real enjoyment, the real happiness, the real contentment comes when you transcend happiness and unhappiness equation. When we go beyond happiness and unhappiness equation, then only we become really happy. Because we stop looking for happiness and then we naturally transcend unhappiness. So eventually we can go beyond happiness and unhappiness. This is a very interesting point. One of the main problems of mind becoming our enemy is we always look for success. We always look for happiness. And we always look for achievement. And we often define success, happiness and achievement in terms of secular success and happiness. That's the main problem. Because so long as the mind is dissatisfied, mind is not different. So long as the mind is not contented, it is not different. Mind always it's something more to achieve, something more to be attained. So success, as we understand in the empirical sense, is not really success. Successful people do not have a healthy mind to enjoy the fruits of their own success. That's my own problem. So you really succeed only when, along with success, you also get a healthy mind to enjoy that success. Otherwise, success is not really big success. Success is not very different from failure. And also achievement. And so long as we interpret success, achievement and satisfaction in empirical terms, mind can never be our friend. Because continued success, success is an unbroken succession of success or happiness is impossible. It is a psychological impossibility. So how to succeed and also succeed in enjoying the fruits of that success? To have a different interpretation of success. And what is the real success? Success is when we transcend, when we go beyond success-failure equation. It doesn't mean that we should not work for success. There's a very big problem. People ask this question. Does it mean that we should be indifferent? We should be indifferent to our success. We should be indifferent to our achievement. We should be indifferent in performing duties and responsibilities. Not at all. It doesn't mean indifference, complacency or negligence. What it means is, on the one hand, we should have complete dedication, efficiency, professionalism, and focus in doing our work, in doing duties and responsibilities. At the same time, we should keep our mind linked to some higher idea, which is higher than the success-failure equation. I can illustrate this point again in the light of an example from our Vedic tradition. And frequently many of these higher concepts from Vedic culture, Vedic tradition, are not fully understood or projected in this modern time. They do have a relevance to our own times. The concept of Rajarshi, you may have heard. If you, those who are interested, can read the 4th chapter of the Gita. Imam vivasude yogam proktavanaham avyam vivaktvan manave praha manu ikshakavya pravi evam parampara praptam imam Rajarshyo vidu sakalena ikamahada yogo nashtat paranta. These are 2 verses in the 4th chapter of the Gita. The focus is the concept of Rajarshi. We should remember, sometimes when I recite the Sanskrit verses, immediately people think, oh, these are old, some antique verses from ancient scriptures which do not have any relevance to our times. But really speaking, one of the greatness, one of the unique aspects of Vedanta is many of these ideas are more relevant today than perhaps they were relevant 5,000 or 6,000 years back. I shall just explain this Rajarshi idea and how it is important in redefining, in reinterpreting the very concept of mental stability, happiness and success. Everyone wants success. Success with real success, that's what you are talking about. Rajarshi is a very interesting, Shankaracharya, the great commentator, has defined Rajanasa Rishayasya Rajarshi. This means simple. You are a king and a sage rolled into one. How can you combine, let us say, to give an example, the professionalism, the success of a Bill Gates, and let us say the wisdom of an ancient Vedic sage? They are poles apart. So how can you combine, let us say, the efficiency, the focus, the professionalism, the modern outlook of a modern businessman and the wisdom of an ancient Vedic sage? This is the subject of discussion here. You need, if you want to be king, you should be professional, you should be successful, you should be efficient, you should have what we call result orientation, and you should have a great deal of concentration, focus. All that you need, organizational skill, leadership qualities, all this you need to be a king. And you should, it's called plenty of wealth. That's why Rajattu Aishwarya Sampatti. A king cannot afford to be poor. So a king should be wealthy, successful, efficient. It's what everyone is looking for in modern times, in 21st century, in a business culture. But what is meant by Rishittu? What is meant by saintliness or the state of being a sage? A sage is able to see the limitation of success. A sage is able to see the limitation of kingliness. So you need wealth, you need all these good qualities, but at the same time, Rishittum tu tasyaha sukshmartha darsana kshamattum. This Sanskrit definition, but it's a very profound definition. That's why I'm quoting this ancient verse. Now, what is the uniqueness of being a sage? A sage doesn't run away from the world. A sage doesn't become complacent or indifferent or negligent to his duties and responsibilities of an household. A householder needs wealth, status, success, professionalism, everything. But a sage will tell the king, see, it's all right, but it is not enough to be successful in the empirical sense. You should also understand the limitation of being successful in the empirical material sense, and then you work for success. So once you understand the limitation, then you won't be enslaved by secular definition of success. money, wealth, status, everything people need, but they cannot and will not bring lasting peace and happiness. Along with that, not instead of them, but along with that, there's a higher spiritual value that is also to be combined along with this contemplation and action combining together. That is the ideal of Rajarshi. Means contemplation, which corresponds to understanding the limitation of material success and success itself. So the best of the material and the best of the spiritual combining together, that is what the ideal of Rajarshi stands for. So, why I emphasize this point? In modern times, in a highly competitive, complex society, people have to work hard, 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours a day. There are many who work even longer hours. Lot of concentration, lot of anxiety, lot of responsibility, a lot of extreme focus, concentration of energy, resources, money, wealth, everything. If you tell them how to combine along with this, how to bring contemplation and meditation, it will be difficult to understand. But the point is, once we realize the naked truth that the most successful man in the empirical material sense is not the happiest in the world. The most successful man in the empirical sense doesn't have the friendliest of minds. His mind may not be friendly towards him. And so long as mind is not friendly, success doesn't translate to real success. Success really becomes misery. So along with this success in the material sense, we should also remember the limitation of that kind of success. And that is possible when we combine kingliness and sageliness or saintliness together. Then mind becomes our best friend. Then along with success, mind will retain its ability, its health, so that we'll be able to enjoy the fruits of success. I think we will have interaction maybe for 10 minutes. That will be better, because in a topic like this, it's not possible to exhaust the different dimensions of a subject. Maybe interaction will be much better. Okay.
I'll bring the mic for questions. Just raise your hand.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. When you started off the talk, you spoke about the intention, the mind not allowing the intention of the person to actual action. Could you give us some practical examples of how to make it happen?
How to make our mind cooperate with what we really want to do?
That's correct.
Okay. From a psychological point of view, we have to remember we all live at a mental level, not an intellectual level. So our attitudes, our natural impulses, tendencies, they all operate at the mental level. So many of our accumulated habits, impressions, what you call vasanas, vrittis, samskaras, do not always cooperate with what we intend to do. There's a conflict between our natural accumulated vasanas, samskaras on the one hand, and what we really want to do. So how to make our mind more cooperative? There are two ways of doing it. One, continued access to these ideas. So if you go on thinking, if you continue your efforts, every effort will produce fresh vasanas and samskaras and vrittis, impressions, and they will reinforce positive samskaras. So our mental system, what we call chittam, has got many vrittis, vasanas and samskaras. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. The negative samskaras, which do not cooperate with us, when they are dominant, then we face this mental block, mind not cooperating with the intellect, with what we want to do. So to increase the amount of positive samskaras, positive vrittis and vasanas in the mental system will reduce the conflict. So for that, continued effort is the only way, and also some kind of activities along with that. So they will produce fresh, healthy samskaras, healthy vrittis, healthy vasanas and impressions. As the amount of healthy and positive samskaras increase, slowly mind will begin to cooperate. So we should look upon the mind as a bag. There are three ways of looking at mind according to Vedanta yoga tradition. One is a bag, bundle. This bag contains a lot of good samskaras, a lot of samskaras which are not so very good. Negative samskaras will create mental block. You may have the best of intentions, you want to do that, mind suddenly creates a mental block. And that mental block functions in the form of a tendency to procrastinate or postpone, or to create false justifications for not doing it. Oh, today is not a good day, maybe tomorrow is a better day. Actually, it's the mental block that is working. Today children have examination, maybe tomorrow I may get more time. Again, mind is actually playing tricks. So how to do that? Continued effort will produce more and more fund of healthy samskaras, vrittis and vasanas. And when mind is enriched and reinforced with more and more healthy samskaras, then mind will become more cooperative. This is what happens.
So, this is more of based on my experience. We're always looking for results. We start with good intention. We want to get results. And when we don't get them, we tend to lose focus and say, no, it's not going to happen. So slowly you will stop having the same good intention. What would you say to that kind of mind?
Of course, continued effort will give you more focus, and you'll be able to sustain your interest for a long time through continued effort. Another thing, suppose we want to do something, let's say, I shall give an example. You want to meditate. People want. Oh, this is what you are talking about? Or are you referring to some spiritual practices or some other?
Anyone.
Okay, let us say for example, suppose you want to start meditation, you know it's very good, all scriptures or teachers say meditation is good, but you are not able to do that. Well, if you are not able to meditate, you can at least read books dealing with those ideas which are related to meditation. Frequently, we may not be able to begin with a more intense kind of practice. Then we should go for less intense forms of practice. If we cannot meditate, at least we can do some unselfish service. If we cannot pray, then we can read some scriptures. Even if we cannot do that, then we can do some engaging, some kind of activities which are of an unselfish nature. We do not bring us any tangible personal profit. Any action, good action, noble action, which does not necessarily bring any profitable, tangible profit to us, that will produce a huge fund of positivities. And you find mind suddenly changes the way it thinks. We cannot have a GPS system how the mind is going to function next day or next moment even. At a physical level we have control, but we really cannot even be sure what thought is going to emerge in our mind next moment. But the moment we start doing something really positive, then mind really begins to change. So we cannot really anticipate how my mind is going to function after 10 years, because, or even after one day. Even a few hours of some good thoughts, good ideas will bring about a change in the way mind looks towards life. This is a normal experience. Immediately we may not get the expected result, but it will bring about a change. I can give an example. Most of you do some kind of social activity, social service. Just imagine, just think of, though I'm talking about those who do social service, philanthropic activities, service activities. Why you are doing that? You ask the question. You lose time, you lose money, you lose energy by engaging in these service activities. But still you continue doing that. There should be some benefit we are getting. There is a benefit. That benefit is a kind of, in Sanskrit it's called Chitta Prasad. Mind suddenly enjoying a kind of inner bliss and contentment. Those who do not engage in any kind of good activity, though they are capable of doing it, they will find this change happening the moment they start doing it. And we are drawn towards it again and again. This is a normal experience that we have talked to many people who do wonderful things for others. They are the beneficiaries of doing that. Whether you're working as a volunteer in the hospitals or in the airports or things which normally you don't get anything in return, but you are getting something much more precious. It is a kind of inner contentment, a kind of feeling that I am doing something worthwhile. It's something that we cannot buy in the market. But without that, mind can never be your friend. Mind needs some kind of food, not the food that we feed it all the time. The best mental food is freedom from desire, unselfishness. That's the best mental food.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. I have a very basic question on all of this. So we have mind, and mind is something which basically has this action and reaction most often. And we measure what our mind is doing by our actions or reactions. But the other factor which...
Could you repeat once more what you said?
The mind. So we measure our mind by our actions or reactions. But the other factor which plays a role in most of the time is the time itself. So time, either mind tries to run with the time or time controls the mind. So how is that related and how do we balance that?
Yeah. Actually time itself is related, the concept of time is related to mind actually. When we go through an unpleasant experience, half an hour is a very long time. When you go through a very pleasant experience, then it's a very short time. So very often there is an inseparable link between time and mind, that's true. And one statement you made earlier, that mind influences action. It is also true that actions will impact upon the mind. That is not frequently studied in modern psychology. It is studied only in yoga and Vedanta psychology. You see, when your mind is disturbed, your actions get scattered. You lose your focus. You are not able to do anything very efficiently because the mind is focused or scattered. Mental energies are scattered. But at the same time, good action, noble action, unselfish action, irrespective of how much or how little of it, it will have a positive effect in the mental condition. Actions will have a direct impact on the mind. This can only be experienced, cannot be analyzed. If you find a person's activities being unfocused or scattered, you know he's disturbed in mind. So we can very easily understand that. But at the same time, good actions, even you may not intend to be unselfish, you may not even want to do it, but you eventually happen to do some good things, that will produce a kind of inner contentment. You feel gradually this happens. It unfolds in the form of inner peace or contentment. So, if one goes on increasing even mechanical, physical actions, even if you can sublimate our worry, our problems, instead of worrying about ourselves, if we can worry about others, that worrying about others becomes a blissful experience. This is called, in the Yoga Sutra has got one slogan, one sutra is Parinama Tapa Samskara Dukkhehi Dukkhameva Sarva Vivekiniha. Parinama Dukkha is a taken to, It means you worry about some higher things, some higher causes. That worry is really a blissful feeling. People who worry about some higher causes, higher ideas, they're able to continue that because that kind of worry brings in a lot of inner blissfulness. So we should sublimate our desires, sublimate our problems, sublimate our worries. If we can give promotion to our worries, then even that worry itself can become a great help. Buddha worried, that's why he became Buddha. Buddha faced this, dead body, got taken in procession, sick man, old man, So actually he was worried. That worry actually made him the great Buddha. So that, in fact, psychologically, that's a mystery why many billionaires, after piling a lot of money, decades of hard work, maybe through questionable means, we don't know, finally they feel a psychological need to do something noble. Because through that noble activity, they feel a kind of inner peace. And that helps them maybe to sleep a little better. This psychological mystery, they may not openly express it. This happens in fact. Yeah.
Let us take one last question. Please one.
Hi, thank you for a wonderful talk. At a philosophical level, the balance between not seeking happiness actively and the balance of procrastinating the universe to unfold it to a greater good. How does that, I constantly feel human race is caught off somewhere in between. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You mean extreme competition, focus, and towards normal success orientations, normal human goals. So how to reconcile with the idea of freedom from desire, freedom from... Well, that is true. So, in fact, combining or merging the two is the only solution towards healthy mindedness and success together. Because too much of focus on success without this higher ideal to guide our activities will eventually take us in the opposite direction. So it's a fact. In fact, I can give an example. The members of Indian diaspora who have migrated to European and American countries have solved the problem of lethargy, inefficiency and inaction, which used to be, not now, but for a long time used to be the characteristics of Indian mindset. In the 70s, there used to be writings, criticism against Hindu growth rate 3.2%. Now the picture has completely changed. Really, that's a great thing to be. That's certainly we should be proud of, we should be happy about it. Now the point is, even after having solved that problem, we have turned a corner now. Now, if in efficiency, in professionalism, in all these, you're all as good as the best in the world, but still you feel a nagging need for some higher ideal. That's why all these temples are coming up all over the Bay Area, It's a great healthy sign. Vivekananda actually seemed to have indirectly made a prophecy about it. And his arrow has hit that goal. That's what we see all around. See, when you solve the problem of lethargy, inefficiency and complacency, used to be the hallmarks of, for some centuries in India. When people have got the best of education, the best of professionalism, and have already imbibed the best of what the modern West can offer, still they feel a need for going something beyond that, which really shows that there is a higher goal along with this, not giving up this, along with the best of modern professionalism, efficiency, success, all these. We should combine the spiritual tradition, and that spiritual tradition in modern context is Karma Yoga. That means, along with success, we should also know the limitation of this kind of success. There is a higher kind of success, which is higher than this kind of success. So, success to be truly successful should combine, along with material success, some spiritual idea, because that will help you to retain a stable, healthy mind, so that you will be able to enjoy the fruits of this success. So that's an important thing. That's a prasanna atmendriya mana. So mind should retain that inner the stability and poise. I think for want of time we shall stop now.
Swamiji, I think let's end the question there. It will be great if we can end with a Shanti mantra.
Om Sahana Vavadu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ram Krishna Pranamastu.